Hello, everybody, and welcome to the esports.net Rocket League show. My name is Oliver Bass, joined alongside by a new face here, but a familiar one in the Danger Taco, and we're here to talk to you guys about the Spring Major. Taco, the Spring Major has just now concluded, so here on esports.net, we thought that it might be time to recap everything that has happened. 4 days of actions have come and gone, and now we are only left with a single team standing. So, Taco, let's break it down day by day, starting with day number 1.
Yeah, so obviously when we're talking about the major, this isn't just, you show up, you play a bracket and you go home. Obviously, there's a lot of days to go through. So day one, you have all your teams crammed in here. And I would say this is really what we were expecting. I think when you come into here, you're saying it's international competition. You're coming out of your regions. So there's going to be mix-em-ups. There's going to be unpredictable matchups. These teams have never played against each other. Hell, the first time they maybe even scrimmed against each other is the week of the tournament. And then you really kind of see everything kind of fall into place. You do see Rule 1 out of the Middle East. They did take down Crew and Complexity. They did take down Liquid, but personally, I don't really see those as massive upsets. I feel like those are very realistic results. So I feel like day one is kind of just whetting everyone's appetite for saying, hey, this is what International Rocket League looks like. We got the better matches kind of saved for later.
Got the better matches saved for later, and we've got the better teams saved for later as well. Coming out of day number 1, we found out that it was going to be a guaranteed EU team in the grand final, as the 4 teams that were able to make it out unscathed and up to the upper bracket finals in day 2 were going to be Team Vitality, BDS, Karmine Corp, and Moist Esports. And actually, they didn't even make it to day 2. They made it all the way to day 3. They skipped over the entirety of day 2, which day 2 was kind of a heartbreaking day. Day 2 was lower bracket round number 1 as well as lower bracket round number 2, and it was heartbreaking for a couple of different people. For one, for NA, we started to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel start to fade out a little bit. At the end of it, the only 2 teams remaining were going to be Gen G and Complexity, which aren't even necessarily NA teams in many people's minds, as only one single NA player between those 2 teams, Complexity from South America and Spain, while Gen G have 2 English players and then the single North American player in Chronic. Outside of that, every other North American org goes down. Optic Gaming, Space Station, and even Furia go down to Ninjas in Pajamas, a South American team which had never even played on the LAN yet this year. Yet, with that win, they actually secured themselves an extra spot at the World Championship. South America now gets to bring 3 total teams to the World Championship versus the 2 prior, and another team does that as well, or at least gets close. Rule 1 ends up beating out Power, beating out the powerhouses of OCE, and gets to go on to day 3. So, Taco, day 2 was kind of the most brutal day, I would say, overall for fans outside of EU and the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, NA already came in here thinking, oh my goodness, the staples aren't even here. What are we even going to do about that? But then I think everyone kind of said, well, you know what? You never know until we actually get into it. And then Complexity gets a nice victory, and we're thinking, okay, we're starting to move. And then everyone just gets sent home. Fury actually had a really rough performance. Yeah. I actually woke up a little bit late and missed the Furia NIP game, mainly because I was like, this is going to be Furia. Like that, I don't see them losing to the team that, admittedly, they're probably better than in general. They're not playing in the same region anymore, but they'd probably take it home, and they lose. And then I remember, as credited by John, aka Always, one of the Reddit moderators for RLCS Sports, pointed out that Astromic on NIP is the de facto captain of that team. He does all the interviews. He's such a nice dude. He's so passionate about the esport, and he built super team after super team after super team in South America and got to the top of that region. And then players one by one got picked off his teams to other orgs, to larger orgs, to bigger contracts, and repeatedly he's gotten back. And not only then did he get all the way back, but then he beat the team that poached Yan from his team that used to dominate SAM, and he built a brand new roster. So it's really impressive to see a player repeatedly get thrown obstacles and overcome all of that. It's a great story. I wish it could have gone farther, but then again, they kind of ran into the buzzsaw after a while, because some of these matchups that you have to go against in those later rounds are pretty brutal. So even though they did get past Furia, then they got thrown to the other SAM export, Complexity, and they just weren't quite as ready for that one.
Yeah, Complexity seemed to be America's last hope at that point. Gen G even taking only a 3-2 victory over Space Station Gaming. It looked scrappy at times, which lead us into day number 3 of the event. And day 3 was where NA's hopes went to die. Not only did Gen G end up getting eliminated after beating Liquid, so beating one of the best seeds coming out of EU gave us a little bit of hope, but then they ended up going 0-4 against Vitality, a Vitality that would end up dropping out of the upper bracket with a loss to BDS, and then Karmine Corp end up beating out Moist Esports, dropping them to the lower bracket where we would have expected them to play Complexity. Unfortunately, NA's other hope and complexity also went down. Rule 1 not only were able to make it out of day 2, but even make it out of day 3. They beat Complexity, beat Moist Esports, and secured their region an extra spot at the World Championship as well, rather than only going in with 2 total spots, both of which would have been to the wildcard. Rule 1 actually punched their own ticket directly through to the group stage of the World Championship in Dusseldorf in just a couple of weeks' time. So Rule 1, really, I would say, the best performance out of day 3. Outside of that, kind of the same old here. Moist Esports, again, a team that people had a lot of question marks. I actually had a lot of people who predicted Moist Esports going 0-2 on the entire event, not even making it out of day 2 of the event. Make it into day 3, but do end up losing to Rule 1, like we said, and then Gen G Mobile 1 end up having to go home as well, leaving us with our top 4 being Vitality, Rule 1, BDS, and Carmine Corp, which at the time going into day 4, kind of a toss-up at that point, Taco, because Vitality, which were the greatest, team in history at that time, they'd gone 3 for 3 in regional wins. No one had ever done that. End up losing to BDS in the upper semifinals. So there were some question marks around all of these teams, really leaving us kind of up in the air going into day number 4.
Yeah, particularly because when we got handed the script for this major, everyone, I feel, kind of was like, really? Vitality just wins it all? Okay, yeah, sure. So I think BDS threw in some spice there by saying, oh, no. Even though this team has had our number all this entire spring split, we can still take them down. And they did so pretty convincingly. Like the beginning of that series, it wasn't just that BDS was playing a little bit better. It's that Vitality looked lost. They did not know how to counter it. They looked a little better on the back half, but it just was too late. The momentum was already there. The crowd seemed to be almost rallying behind BDS because it's like, oh, look, the favorites are losing. Let's go team upsetting the favorites. So great for BDS to show just how capable they are with that new Rise edition. But I do think a lot of the attention was less so on that upset because we expected the European teams to duke it out. But on Rule 1, a lot of people wanted this team to succeed. It's co-founded or rather co-owned by Sunless Khan, one of the most popular, if not the most popular creator in all of Rocket League. They've put a lot of effort into a lot of likable characters. All the players in that roster are nice. And we're thinking, yeah, it'd be great if they could make a deep run. Who knows? First 2 days, I personally said, I mean, you and I watched that major together. I was not convinced. They looked kind of sloppy. They looked really nervous. They were double committing. They were freaking out too much. They were doing solo plays instead of team plays. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is all well and good. They might take some games, but like, this is just not going to work. And then what do you know? They just come in day 3. This is why multi-day tournaments are so important, because you have the day to reset, look at the tape, figure out what you're doing wrong. And my goodness, you got to give Cresper, the coach, a raise or something, because they pulled it all together. And it was like I was legitimately watching a completely different team. They looked much more organized. They took on a complexity and then run that and then say, oh, well, now you got to play Moist. And then they run that as well. And it looked super dangerous. Moist at times was just almost backpedaling, just glued against their back wall, praying for misses rather than actually being able to form a defensive shell. Just super impressive, and can't wait to see what that Amina roster can do at Worlds.
Unfortunately for the Mina roster, after that would be their end. Going into day 4, the first matchup of the day was Vitality versus Rule 1, and after Vitality took a 4-0 win over Gen G the day prior, it seems like the momentum started to build. They take another 4-0 victory, going 8-0 through 2 matches, unfortunately sending Rule 1 home without a single win on their final day of the event. And then the ball just kind of kept rolling. BDS and Carmine Corp go to 7 in the upper bracket finals, just a barely win for BDS as it's a nail-biter series that goes in their favor. And then Carmine Corp have to bounce back in the lower final, which they don't. Another Game 7 here as Vitality find themselves the win overall. And then Vitality do, well, what we would think is the unthinkable, considering how many times it hasn't been done online, but it has been done on LAN before. Vitality get the bracket reset win versus Team BDS with a 4-2 victory in the first series and a 4-1 victory in the second. It is actually the second bracket reset win we have seen in RLCS LAN history, as it's also the second RLCS LAN to do a fully double elimination tournament. So last year Moist did it against Falcons, this year Vitality against BDS. It just kind of feels like the team coming from the lowers at these LANs just seems to have this momentum, and on top of that, they also had BDS's number. Again, like we said, the only 2 series to go to 7 were BDS versus KC in the upper bracket, and then in the lower bracket final with KC versus Vitality. So Vitality, when they came into that grand final, Taco, they just knew how to play BDS. It seemed like at moments BDS were starting to figure out the pieces and put it all together, but it really kind of just goes to show you that even at the best moments for some of these teams, it didn't do anything. First series of the day, Vitality come out the gates firing, find themselves a 2-1 overall series score with a 4-1 victory in Game 3. BDS take a timeout to try and recollect themselves, and what do you know? 5-1 victory the next game. It did nothing to slow them down. So Vitality proving themselves to not only be the best team at this event, but the best team all split. That is 4 events in a row. The first team in RLCS history to ever win that many events back to back to back to back. Incredible.
And really the only team that could top that, or really a team in the future to be able to top that, is to be able to just win a major through the upper bracket. Because really you can't do much better than that. They did face adversity, but of the series they did lose. So obviously in a double elim bracket, they're only losing 1 series. That is only their 2nd series in general that they have lost throughout the entirety of this split, including non-RLCS competitions, because we had Odyssey Rising Stars. We also have these outside tournaments that other teams can play in. And of course, the Vitality team wants to play in those, and they barely even dropped anything. It must be so strange for Zen, obviously coming in super hyped, and everyone's saying, well, we have seen this song and dance before. A player that plays incredibly online and in ranked and in theory should be a great player, but how is this really going to work? So credit to Farah and also credit to the Vitality organization for being able to slot them in, and it looks seamless. If you introduced a player to, or rather a fan to this esport and made them watch Vitality and said, hey, by the way, this is that kid's first international LAN, I really feel like no one would even know. They did not look shook. I don't remember a series in which I actively would say Zen had a poor game. And really in that grand final, they won the offensive MVP. And of course they did, because they were just play after play after play after play. And some might say, well, BDS is playing sloppy. There's a big difference, though, between just playing terribly and being forced into constant mistakes because your opponent is just that flawless at times.
And they looked almost entirely flawless throughout the entirety of the event. Like we said, Vitality have only dropped 2 series. Actually, not even series. 2 matches. 1 series of the 2 losses that they take throughout their entirety of this new roster. So going into the World Championship, they are definitely the favorites as of right now. But we got to get ready for that World Championship, as this has only been the Spring Major in Boston. In Dusseldorf, in just a couple of weeks' time, we're going to find out who is the best of the very best. With Vitality running with some momentum right now, I think a lot of people really are going to have their eyes on this team. And, well, hopefully you guys have your eyes on the esports.net channel, because that is all that we have got here today for the Rocket League show. We're going to be coming back with some more action, some more coverage about what's going on for the Rocket League World Championship in just a little while. But for today, that is all that we have got. Thank you again for tuning in. My name has been Oliver Bass, joined by The Danger Taco, and we will see you guys next time. Have a good one.